Hey guys, what's up? Lumpy Ice Cream here with my first action figure review in quite some time. I had recorded a few, but something went wrong with the SD card and it corrupted those particular files. But I'm here now, a little bit of a different thing, reviewing a Marvel figure this time, instead of Doctor Who figures, which I'm pretty sure I haven't done before. I'm pretty sure I was strictly just a Doctor Who figure reviewer at the time. But now I'm back and I have a new style in which to review. Taking some inspiration, some would say it's ripping off another YouTuber by the name of the Reviewer King, or the Clipper King as he's formerly known as. If you are not familiar with his channel, please go and check him out. He is one of the most informative and funny action figure reviewers that I know of. He does review 1/6 scale figures, like 12 inches, like Hot Toys and all of that. And please go check him out and support his channel. Well, I have to. I'm taking his style here. For those who don't know, that's the Tim off camera. Run around here, get your face in here. The back's open here, so get your face in there. It's dark, so
to my channel.
You can't skip. You can barely see him, but there he is. Okay, get out of here.
Okay, I'm going.
Shoot. So and you knocked him over. But yeah, I reached out to him on Facebook a long time ago and said, I love your style. Could I use it for my reviews? And he said, yeah, sure, no problem. Just send me a link when you've done it. So he probably thinks I'm a rude bastard because I haven't been in contact with him. But it just took me a long time to churn out a review. And yeah, but let's get to it. I've put my own twist on the formula. I haven't strictly copied it. So let's just so we got 7 categories that this figure has, and we'll get into them in a minute. Each category will be marked out of 10, so 70 is the overall that the figure is trying to get. If you've seen on Tim and I's joint channel, that is how we review movies, but we got 4 categories. This time, 7. And then the overall rating. Alright, so let's talk the character. The character, this is the Marvel Legends Series 9, or Galactus series, Bullseye figure. Now, the character Bullseye, if you have a Daredevil figure, this is a must-get for you. I guess he is the main villain for Daredevil, like strictly like a hand-to-hand combatant kind of thing. He's the kind of hands-on main villain, whereas I guess the main villain is Kingpin. So this is as I bump the camera, this is a pretty old figure, I believe around 2005, 2004, around that time. This was actually one of the first Marvel Legends my brother got. I think it might have been the first. I got Professor X from that wave. This isn't the same figure that my brother had. That got destroyed a long time ago. So yeah, if you do have a Daredevil figure, you need to get this guy. If not, if you don't have a Daredevil, I guess he only really fits in with a Daredevil collection. And I think in the grand scheme of things, a Daredevil collection isn't necessarily going to be the most diverse thing. You're just mainly going to have like Daredevil, Elektra, maybe some hand ninjas, Kingpin, and Bullseye. I guess you could put him in a Spider-Man display, which I currently have set up as I don't actually own a Daredevil figure at the moment. So yeah, you can put him in a Spider-Man display, which I think that's probably the best thing to do with Daredevil, as they do share an enemy in Kingpin. So for source material slash character, I'm giving him an 8. By himself, not that crucial, but with Daredevil, definitely a duo you have to pick up. Rolling on to the packaging, and if you were a fan of Toy Biz Marvel Legends, you'll know they kept pretty much the same packaging throughout their entire run, as I drop it. It's this extremely annoying, hard to open clamshell packaging, as opposed to the more modern Hasbro ones, which are just like, you know, you cut the tape and slide it open. For mint on card collectors that like to open their figures and then put them back in the box sometimes, I know a few people do that, these are a nightmare because once you open it, you have pretty much destroyed the packaging, as you can see here. Here is the Galactus, the Build-A-Figure. This comes with a leg, we'll show that off later. The Marvel Legends Bullseye right there. There's the comic, which comes with most Marvel Legends. Sometimes it's a poster. But yeah, big, chunky packaging, which I guess can also be a nightmare for mint on card collectors, because these take up a lot of space. Here is the other figures in the wave. You've got the first appearance Grey Hulk with the Green Hulk variant. The Nightcrawler. Bullseye, which you can see here, he does have a variant which has the white parts are like more of a grey, and instead of a blue shading on the outfit, it's kind of like this grey sparkly kind of plastic, and he has got an angry face on there. I'm not a big fan of that variant. I just think it's too muted. It just looks a little too muted for me. War Machine. Deathlock, which I also have, and he will be reviewed next. Professor X and Doctor Strange, which I also have Doctor Strange. I bought him loose. I might do a review of him in the future, or I might just do a review of him when I get him again in packaging with the Galactus piece. You've got the bios up the top, or the bio on Bullseye. I don't like the face he's got on the packaging. I'm glad they went for a different face there. And a read up, which I'm not going to bore you with. It's your standard packaging, which I'm going to give an 8 as well, just because it's clunky and annoying to open. And yeah, it can be... it's a nice enough packaging, but I think a more slim, sleek packaging like we have now is just a tiny bit better, but I do find some kind of retro goodness in those old packaging. So for packaging, it's an 8, and I'm going to give that to every Toy Biz figure, no matter which one, because they all pretty much had the same packaging. So moving on to the sculpt. This guy has got a really nice sculpt. I would love to see this body mold utilized a little bit more. If we look at his face, he's got this kind of pouty face, I guess. He's not too happy about something.
He had his ice cream taken away.
He had his ice cream taken away. It has so much emotion, which I think is something that we don't get with Marvel Legends nowadays. They all have the same face, they have the same proportions in the face, and we just don't get variety anymore. This guy's face is amazing. I mean, you got the ears poking through, but then around the ears you got like the folds of the mask, and then you got his eyes there, which the seams of the mask are sculpted. Again, a detail we just don't get nowadays. You got all of the creases and wrinkles in the mask. You got the target, the bullseye on the top of his forehead there. That's sculpted. The musculature of this body is it's sleek, but it's muscular. Which, you know, Bullseye does not need to be a buff character. It serves to the design for him being sleek like this. He's got this collar piece around his neck, which can be removed, but it is glued down, so, you know, don't. I mean, if you want, you can rip it off, because I know from experience, because that's what I did to my brothers. I was young, give me a break. We then have his arms and his shoulders. Got all the musculature there, the veins. And then we come down to the glove, and this detail is just phenomenal. You can tell, like, where the costume ends and the glove begins, even though they're the same color. You can see there the stitching, the zip running down there, the white parts. They've got all of this sculpt of wrinkles and like cloth detail. Nowadays, you just don't get that same level of detail from Hasbro. You get a belt here, which has all of these pouches, which are individually sculpted. You got the seam running down the middle. More of that creasing on the lower body. This side you have this holster, and this strap here moves. This one doesn't, that's fixed, but it's got like all these little needles or something all the way around, and they are individually painted. Moving down to his boots, very much in the same style as his gloves. You can see the stitching up the top, the zip running down the bottom, and all of the detail in the boot, all of the stitching on the bottom. You got the I forget what they're called, treads of the boot. Is that right? Yep. Tim just gave me the nod.
It's like a clap, but worse.
So yeah, all of that folding, it's just a great sculpt. And I think it's one thing that Hasbro just need to do a little bit more of. This sculpt and paint detail, you just don't get nowadays. And it's kind of upsetting. So for sculpt, I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. It's well proportioned, which can't be said for most Hasbro figures. It's well sculpted, which can't be said for most Hasbro figures. And it just looks really like a real person in a suit, which can't be said for most Hasbro figures. In case you don't know, I'm not that big a fan of Hasbro. Yeah. So yeah, 10 out of 10 for the sculpt. Moving on to paint. Now, this is kind of odd because I've seen multiple reviews of this guy, and obviously my brother owned one before, and he's supposed to have a ton of blue shading. However, this one appears to have missed that in the factory or something, because there's some around here, and it's very faint, and there's some on his butt, little bit on the back of his arm. I've seen it where the shading is quite prominent, and you can tell it's there. Here, I don't know what happened. I don't necessarily hate it, because I don't mind when black isn't shaded. I mostly mind when it's other colors that aren't shaded, but for black, I think black shading can work just as well when the black can work just as well when it isn't shaded. Same goes for the white. The white isn't really shaded. I mean, you got a little bit here. The one thing I don't really like is the way Toy Biz and some Hasbro as well, the way they shaded white was they got a very light blue and put it over the top, which I don't really like that much, but alright, fair enough. The greys, or the whites here, they have a very faint grey. Now, when I was actually picking this guy up, I picked it up from a local, well, I say local, it's about 20 minutes away from my house. A local collectible shop, Dan Solo's Comics and Collectibles. he has a lot of cool stuff. If you're in the Moona, Glenorchy area or Claremont, Hobart, around that area, definitely go and check out Dan Solo's, because it's a phenomenal shop, and I just recommend going there because you can find a lot of good stuff. He had 2 of these Bullseyes. This one is the one I picked up. The only reason I picked it up was because the Galactus leg was in a better condition than the other one. However, the one that had the kind of fade... If you have the Galactus figure, you know it's prone to sunlight. That will fade very quickly. And obviously this one had been in a lot of sunlight, and it had faded the leg. So I had to come up with a decision. Did I want the Bullseye that had the nicer paint job, but the shit leg? Or did I want the Bullseye that had the lesser paint job, but the better leg? I ultimately went with this one because, yeah, okay, he's not got the best paint job. But to have a Galactus figure where one leg is obviously faded, it just wouldn't be good. So it does appear that this guy missed some of the shading. The paint isn't also that good. You can't see it, but there's like this white kind of stuff around the eye. Like white paint, like it missed. There's some black seeping through. There's a black dot there. The paint job isn't the cleanest. I mean, it's not bad, and there was... On the other one, there was a lot of shading, which, you know, it was upsetting that I had to turn that one down, but yeah. So for the paint on this guy, because it's black, and I said I don't mind it when black isn't shaded, I'm giving it an 8 because it's still a good paint job, and I've seen what the figure should look like, so I'm giving it an 8. Now it's time for articulation, and this is where any Marvel Legend should excel. At least Toy Biz. He's got a ball joint in the head, so you can rotate it. He has a good range of motion in the head. It's just the neck is a little bit hunched forward, so he doesn't look up all the way. Like if you wanted him running, you could do that, but he doesn't look up all the way like some do. Well, he does have a good range of motion. It's just because of the sculpt of the neck that it doesn't move as well as it could. But I think that is more than enough range of motion for Bullseye. He does have a butterfly shoulder joint, which allows for it to go all the way back and forward. So, yeah, that's really good. He has a ball joint at the shoulder, so it can rotate and go up and down. He has a cut at the bicep, which rotates around the ball joint. Double jointed elbows. He has a cut at the glove, and that cuts just above the zip there. He has a wrist hinge, which can move back pretty far, doesn't really move down that much. And individual finger articulation. It's a little hard to utilize, but you can get it. He has an ab crunch, which moves really far down and pretty far back. He has a waist rotation, which is not hindered by the belt. We then get to the fault in not just this figure, but any figure that has this problem. Wide-jointed ball joints. If you don't know what I mean by that, that means that when you bring out like this, you have to rotate it so the seam is facing forward to bring it forward and then utilize the thigh swivel to move the leg. As opposed to a T-joint where you don't need to do that. You don't need to worry where the seam or the joint is facing to bring it out. That is a problem with any Marvel Legend. I don't care what it is. When they have these, it's a problem. I don't like them. But he does have a thigh swivel, double jointed knees, swivel at the boot. articulation at the ankle. That can move forward and back, and he has a slight pivot. Just slight. And a toe joint. So for articulation, he gets a 9 out of 10 just because of the wide-jointed hips. That will bring any mark down to a 9 out of 10 for me, because I do find it infuriating. Some people might not be as bothered by it as I am, but I really am bothered by wide-jointed hips. I just don't like them. They're just complicate an action figure, I think, and I know I'm justifying myself, or I'm not, whatever. So yeah, 9 out of 10. Rolling on to accessories. The only accessory that Bullseye brings is the comic book that's inside the packaging and the Build-A-Figure piece. I don't count these as accessories because they're not accessories for the action figure. He comes with jack shit. That's a big problem for Bullseye. That is a major, major problem for Bullseye. He is a guy that can pretty much utilize anything around him and turn it into a weapon. I mean, in the... not the best example, I know, but in the Daredevil movie, he kills a old woman with a frickin' peanut. He can turn anything into a weapon. So why doesn't he come with anything? It's not like you had to give him like a big rocket launcher or a sword, a little dagger or something. I mean, I managed to find a dagger, and that's what he's holding on my shelf. So, but that's the problem you'll get with the Build-A-Figure figures. They come with a bath piece, but oftentimes that comes in lieu of an accessory, which isn't right for a character like Bullseye. Some characters it doesn't really matter, like Hulk. You don't really need accessories for Hulk. And the thing is, Marvel Legends always used to come with like display stands. They pretty much went out after the Build-A-Figure came in. It is what it is. I mean, yeah, we got the Build-A-Figure, and that's a genius design, but it also came at a cost of losing accessories for action figures. We did eventually end up getting those clear stands, the flight stands, which they're okay, but I mean, you know, it's just upsetting that that's what ended up happening. So, for accessories, he gets a 0 because that's what they gave us. Nothing. Anyway, going on to the value of the figure. I ended up paying $32 for him. Not bad at all. I would easily buy an expensive Toy Biz figure over a... Okay, so say you had a $40 Toy Biz Marvel Legend, and you had a $15 Hasbro one. Depending on the figure, of course, I would get the Toy Biz one any day of the week, because they're better quality, they're better made, they're just all around better. Now, I'm not saying that Toy Biz were perfect 100% of the time, because they just weren't. They fudged up with their female figures. I don't think they made a perfect female figure. Hasbro have perfected that. However, when you do look at the more recent Hasbro figures that they're making, they are choosing a lot of figures that Toy Biz didn't necessarily do a good job at. If they were to make a new Bullseye, I doubt it would be as cool as this guy. I mean, it's just the truth of it. So for value, for $32, this guy is a 10 out of 10. When would I say you draw the limit? I'd say $40 might be pushing it. Maybe. It does depend on how you feel about the character, and if you have a Daredevil display, he's definitely crucial in it. get him over the variant. He is much nicer than the variant. So the overall for this guy is a 53 out of 70. Not a bad score. He can still hold his head up high. He's definitely one you have to pick up. One thing I didn't mention, if you can see that there is a bit of plastic that's chipped off of the hand, but not a big deal for me. So if you see this guy for a decent price, definitely pick him up, because, I mean, you know, if you see any good or decent Toy Biz figure for a good price, pick it up. Don't buy a Hasbro figure. Buy these because they're so good, and, you know, it is upsetting that Toy Biz don't make figures anymore, because I miss this kind of quality with the Marvel license. So yeah, this was the first review in ages. It was also the first step in building Galactus, the first ever Marvel Legends Build-A-Figure. He was later joined by the Sentinel, Apocalypse, Onslaught, Giant Man, Mojo, and MODOK. I will at some point be getting all of those figures. I do intend on getting all of the figures in this wave, with the exception of variants. So who's next to review? Deathlock is next to review. Next to review after Deathlock will be Nightcrawler. I actually spoke to Dan a few days ago, and he's locating that for me. I have to see him next week about that. Next would more than likely be War Machine. I really want to track him down. Then it'd be Professor X, Grey Hulk, and then Doctor Strange before we take a look at the Build-A-Figure Galactus. Galactus has been a figure I've been wanting for ages. Since I first got the Professor X figure and my brother got this, it's been a wave I've been looking to get for a long time. So yeah, I will see you guys for the next review, which will be Deathlock. Yeah, I'll see you guys then. Until then, ta-ta.